Hey friends, welcome back, and it's time yet again for more Reddit stories about entitled people, crazy people, and everything in between. So be sure to subscribe if you're new here, and we're getting right into it. Am I the a-hole for refusing to consider stopping our divorce after my ex admitted her, quote, psychic friend lied about me having an affair? I met my wife Rona when we were in college together. I made the obviously terrible assumption that the fact she was in post-secondary education meant she had a modicum of common sense. We started dating our senior year, and after job hunting, settled on moving back to her hometown after graduating. We found an apartment and lived together for 2 years before getting married. All good so far. At our wedding, I met an old friend of hers, Anna. She offered to read my palms since she was part gypsy. Weird. I am in construction, and I know a few people from that group, and they call themselves Roma. Whatever. Anna only comes to town every once in a while. She lives in New York City, so she doesn't have time to visit since she has an exciting life there. She makes costumes for plays and cosplayers, so we see her maybe 4 times over the next 2 years. Last time she came was Labor Day last year, and that's when it got weird. All of a sudden, Rona starts acting oddly. She starts checking in on me at work, coming by when I'm working late, asking to use my phone because hers is almost out of power, that sort of thing. She finally comes out and accuses me of having an affair. I thought she was joking, so I laugh and say that I am not. This sets her off like a Roman candle, because Anna told her I would laugh it off when Rona came for the truth. I laughed because it was ridiculous. I barely had time for a relationship with my wife and my job. I am home all weekend long. When I go golfing, her brother is almost always either in my foursome or at the club. And most important of all, I love my wife. I wouldn't do anything to harm her. And yet she takes the word of Anna, the psychic seamstress, over mine. She asks me to leave our apartment. I say no because I have nowhere else to go. So she leaves and moves back with their parents. They think she is nuts too. I spent the next few months working and trying to convince her that I'm not cheating and that I want her to come home. I don't get invited to Thanksgiving because it would be awkward. I didn't even stick around for Christmas. I went home to see my family. They have been following all this stupidity without commenting until then. At Christmas, they had an intervention. They said my wife was having a break from reality and that she wasn't coming out of it. My dad told me to give my head a shake, which he only does when I am being monumentally stupid. When I got back, I went to a lawyer and started my divorce. That was in January. Finally, at the beginning of April, Rona calls me to talk. I say that we should talk through lawyers. She starts to cry, and I agree to meet her in public if she will allow me to record our conversation so I can give a copy to my lawyer. She eventually agreed. Turns out her and her parents hired a private detective to find my affair. 6 months and a huge bill later, 0 evidence of an affair. She finally believes me and wants to come home. I tell her that our lease is up in July, and I already found a job in Denver near my family. She says she would come with me. I respectfully declined. I told her we just weren't right for each other. The truth is, I do not want to have my offspring share DNA with this dingbat. Anyway, I am moving ahead with my divorce. I am gutted that she took her friend's psychic vibrations over mine. Her family has approached me several times. The last time, her dad offered to front us a 25% down payment on a house if I agreed to go to marriage counseling instead of just leaving. I politely declined. I cannot be bought. Rona is now depressed, but I see no way of ever trusting her again. She is young enough she can marry again and wreck some other guy's life. I snapped today. Was out for a hike with my son and dog. It's rainy, slightly windy, just a lovely day to be in the woods. Bright green needles and leaves against a gray sky. Wildflowers bursting up through it all. My son finds a snail on a tree. He's stoked. We're looking at it, talking about its shell, its slime, what it's doing, etc. It's a narrow section of the trail, so we're over on the side. My dog has her face buried in the bushes. I see some boomer coming up with his dog. My son sees the big chocolate lab, so he gets all excited about the big dog, and invites both of them to see the snail. My son is standing in the middle of the trail now. Come on, look at the snail. It's got a shell, I'm sure he was going to say. But this dude pushes my son out of the way. A 4-year-old who is asking him to see a snail on a trail on Sunday morning. I immediately block his way. Yo, you need to apologize to my son, now. He can't just be standing in the middle of the trail. When I say I saw red, I'm dead-ass serious. You pushed my son. Apologize now. He was not ready for this level of confrontation, let me assure you. Immediately backs down, mumbles an apology, then takes off. Where is he going that he can't politely ask a child to move? What is so pressing that he can't wait for the child to move? The effing entitlement. Potentially traumatizing my neighbor's children after they kept coming onto my property and trying to get into my house. Me and my now fiancé have lived in this house and neighborhood for a few months now. I have a 1-year-old son myself, so I know how kids can be. However, my neighbors have 3 children, a 9, 12, and 14-year-old. All of them are boys. At first, they weren't too much trouble. I would just see them running around throwing sticks, riding scooters across the street. But as of recently, they had started getting a lot closer to my property. This all started with the oldest one throwing various trash into our yard that my fiancé would continually have to pick up. Then all 3 children started digging holes in our yard, banging on the door, and I even caught them trying to lockpick my front door with a bobby pin. This had happened 4 to 5 times already. Of course, I brought this up to their mother, who has done little about it. They seemed to have very little supervision, and apparently CPS had already been called numerous times because of how often they seemed to be left alone. I warned the mother that we have 2 big dogs, whose sole purpose was to protect against intruders, so if their sons happen to actually get into my house, they would probably end up hurt. I did not want these little children to end up hurt, of course, which is why I was warning her. She brushed it off, saying if anything happens to her boys, she would have me promptly arrested and my dogs put down. So I decided to take matters into my own hands to ensure the safety of these boys. As expected, the oldest one and his brothers were sneaking around my yard again. I waited until they got closer to the front door. When the second youngest opened the door, I said a command to my dogs, and they immediately ran out barking and growling. All the boys screamed and started yelling. They ran and ran all the way until they got to their house, getting wet by the lawn sprinklers on the way. I called my dogs back. They stopped at the end of the lawn like I had trained them to, and we didn't hear much for a few days. Their mother and the police came knocking at the door. She said some stuff about how my dogs bit her children, and I was a danger to the neighbors. But I showed the security footage from my camera to the police, and it pretty much died down from there. She's still trying to keep the case open, but I feel as if I've done little to no wrong. Her boys don't bother us anymore, and her children aren't hurt, and were never going to be. Edit. I did tell the police that they were attempting to break into my house. It was obvious from the video too. I just decided not to press charges, considering the only reason they're acting like this is because they have a neglectful mother. For those of you saying my dogs are aggressive, Maybelle can't sleep unless she chews on her stuffy repeatedly, and Robbie is scared of spoons. Mother-in-law tried to get me arrested as she did not know how old her daughter was. So my significant other has been no contact/minimal contact with her mom for about 4 years now, as soon as she moved out. The reasons for this is a long story, but a TLDR is she's addicted to pretty much everything and is an extreme narcissist on top of that. She occasionally combines so many drugs in such amounts that she loses touch with reality for days at a time. Psychosis at its finest. An important piece of backstory is that my mother-in-law despises me and has wished death upon me more than once. Her reasoning for this apparently is that I stole her daughter from her and she thinks I'm the reason that my significant other won't talk to her. Entirely untrue. Anyways, so I am a little older than my significant other. I'm 25 and she is currently 22. One day a year ago, when I was 24 and my significant other was 21, we decided after work that we would drive to the liquor store and buy some vodka for the weekend. Whenever we go to the liquor store, we usually only have one of us go in, just so the other can chill in the car and relax. On this particular day, I was the one to go in. I grab our usual and go to the checkout counter, which is right next to the entrance. I see my mother-in-law walk in and think, oh please don't see me. And as soon as I thought that, she sees me. So she and her drug buddy she was with come to the checkout area and she says something like, so OP, why are you getting alcohol? Do you plan on sharing that with significant other? And trying to be cordial and civil, I say something like, yeah, we're off the next few days, so we're just going to relax. At this moment, mother-in-law turns to the poor cashier, who obviously was picking up that things were tense, and demands a manager / the police because I'm providing alcohol to her underage 18-year-old daughter. I immediately correct her on her daughter's age, and she raises her voice and responds, "Do you think I don't know how old my own f***ing daughter is?" Obviously not. Side note, this is somewhat made funnier by the fact that my mother-in-law provided all of her children with cannabis and alcohol as they requested. So my significant other actually started drinking and smoking at 16, but her older brother started at 13. So the cashier doesn't know what to do, and my mother-in-law and her friend are ranting at her about how awful and horrible I am. Other customers are looking at us now, and I have enough social anxiety as it is, so this was really crappy. I get my phone out and call my significant other, and she asks what's up. I tell her that she needs to come in. She asks why, and I tell her what's going on. Before I can finish the story, she says, "Shh," and hangs up. A few seconds later, she's in the building. She walks up to the cashier / her mom, and in a hushed voice immediately starts saying, "What do you think you're doing? Why on earth are you making a scene here?" And stuff like that. She gets her wallet out and proves to the cashier and the supervisor that had by now come to the checkout station that she is indeed 21 and her mother is a moron. Mother-in-law then insisted to the manager that the ID must be faked, so they scanned it. It scanned and proved it wasn't a fake. Mother-in-law realizes that she's screwed up and now begins to cry and starts saying sorry to my significant other. My significant other refuses to make eye contact and starts to exit the store while saying stuff like, "Leave me alone, please." I pay for the drinks and I head out. My mother-in-law and significant other are arguing over by our car. No idea where the friend went at this point. Presumably stayed in the liquor store though. My significant other tells me to get in the car, and mother-in-law grabs onto the mirror as my significant other starts to back out. My significant other stops the car, rolls down the window a crack, and says that if mother-in-law doesn't leave, she will be calling the police and my father-in-law. This got my mother-in-law to leave and storm back into the store. Anyway, friends, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Make sure to drop a like if you enjoyed and subscribe to the channel for more Reddit shenanigans. So stay awesome, have a nice day, and I'll see you next time.